It's really an honor to be here with you all today. I really am excited about it. Ooh, do I get a laser? If I press this, is there a red button? Oh my God, you guys don't know what you're in for. I'm Doug Henderson from EAB. I have been with EAB, formerly Royal & Company, since God was just a wee little girl baby. And this is, if we stood in this room long enough, we would enter into my 16th year with the company together. So a long history. I came up as a bit of a numbers nerd through analytics. I've led our analytics team for about a decade. For the past 5 or 6 years, I've been on the email deliverability side. We do, as Steve mentioned, we are soup to nuts all the way, essentially now from cradle to grave. So I thought maybe what I would tell you about, a little bit about the company, a little bit about myself also. So we're going to talk about what the heck is EAB, and where did we come from? Do millennials and Gen Zs, high school students, right this second? Do they even know what email is? Does it matter to them? And let's talk about engagement. It's one of those buzzwords. We've all been saying it over and over for the past couple of days. What I really want to dive into and kind of impart with you all is kind of what I think that means. I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm really hoping that I can just impart some knowledge on behalf of you. Through the College Board, through ACT, through all of the different data sources that we have at our disposal at EAB, we're talking to about every single high school student in the country every single year. How many of you have kids in high school or right now? Not too many in high school right now. How many of you have kids, period? I'm going to be talking to every single one of your kids. There isn't a kid in the country that we're not engaged with. And so everyone that... let me just tell all of you, we had them first, okay, before you all. So setting the stage for marketing and what that looks like. So EAB, by the numbers, 300 plus colleges and universities. This is on our enrollment services business. We actually, when I started in 2004, we were about a $20 million business. We're now private equity owned, approaching up on 300 million per year. How many of you all saw the CNN made global news where Robert Smith, the billionaire philanthropist, paid for every Morehouse student graduation, gave the commencement address? You all heard that? That's who owns EAB. So there's a very philanthropic bend to what we're doing. There's a real altruism. I'm first gen. My grandfather on my mother's side was a telephone pole worker in California. My grandparents on my dad's side were dairy farmers. So education has made a big difference in my life and what we've been able to do as a family. And so it's something that I really hold near and dear and prize. This is my Mr. Rogers jacket, by the way. And inside, so I wear it every day. And inside it, I keep this little worksheet. So I've got 2 girls at home, and when my oldest was about 7 and doing her math, we gave her these, the kids will do this thing where, what's 8 minus 7? They'll say, that's easy, that's easy, that's easy. Okay, well, what is it? And so there's that stall technique. Well, I did that with my mother also, and I remember doing these flashcards. And when my oldest was coming through, we were doing the flashcards, and we got to the end. There's this little worksheet. He says, Daddy, this one's got your name on it. No one can probably see that, but my handwriting is worse at 43 than it was at 7 with my name, but all my math is right. And so what I keep this here because as a marketer, I've got a marketing degree, but always a bit of a numbers nerd and coming through analytics. And I think for a lot of the folks in the room, it's really important to think about what are we measuring? How do we prove the things that we assert as marketers? Anyone can just assert something, right? But to have that proof element, to be able to prove it when you need to is important. And that's one of the things that we do with our clients every single day. So I'll talk with you a little bit about the full journey of a customer cycle and as students and their families are moving through the higher education process. We are in K through 12. We do advancement with alumni offices. We're in the grad space. But what I want to talk with you all about a little bit today and kind of put into context is the undergraduate institutions that we serve. This is our 30th year of exclusively serving higher ed, starting from 1989, at least on, as Steve mentioned, what started as Royal and Company. Lots of different engagement points through what we would call the enrollment funnel. So as we all have been talking about over the last couple of days, we think about engagement and we think about our target audience. We're going to talk a little bit about that. You can think about the enrollment funnel in a couple of different ways. Increasing engagement for a decreasing population, okay? A lot of us are experiencing that in each of our markets. So general census demographic information would tell us that student age population in this country as a whole isn't actually going to increase for another 3 or 4 years before we start to see it back on the uptick. We're still in a trough right now. What's interesting is a lot of the demographic shift, the higher concentration. I don't know if anyone knows this. I know we've got some friends from the Boston area. Boston has the highest concentration of higher ed in the entire country and also has one of the highest rates of decline in the Northeast of student age population. Same thing, fighting for increased engagement for a decreasing population. We're seeing population shifts from the Northeast to the Southwest over time. A lot of us are experiencing that in this room and trying to adapt to that. It's the same in higher ed. When we think about the enrollment funnel and what it means for a high school student starting to think about college and doing that with their families, we have an enrollment funnel also. For an individual institution, there are about 2 to 3 million students graduating high school every single year. Again, we're touching about all of them for at least one of our clients. For any one of those institutions, a student has to raise their hand and express an interest, just an inquiry. It's just lead gen, right? What we call search. ACT, PSAT test takers. In the senior year, it's time to get serious. It's time to get your butt in gear and apply to college. How many people here applied to more than 3 schools? Right, a few. How many applied to more than 6? Yeah, not too many. The average is 6 to 8 institutions that a student is applying to right now, and that's increasing every single year. Well, guess what? That presents real challenges to our clients. We work with enrollment offices. We're a direct marketing organization, so mail and email, digital, retargeting, et cetera, et cetera. Those admissions offices that we serve, trying to make that right connection between an institution of higher learning and a student, is made even more difficult by all of that competition and the fact that there are a lot of false positives out there. In fact, most engagements, just by the nature of 6 to 8 applications, you can only show up and enroll at one of those, right? Again, an increasing engagement is a challenge for a decreasing population of students. So that's kind of the framework in which we operate and how we try to think about each one of our clients individually. All right, so let's talk about millennials and the new group of students, of Gen Z students. We're going to do a little bit of, again, kind of hand surveys and see what you all think about some of these things. So we do a lot of first-person research. We've got a tenured professor, PhD, lots and lots of experience that lead a group within our organization that's been doing first-person research. We've had millions of interactions, one of the largest longitudinal studies over the last 20 years with high school and college-age students, and we follow them through that journey. So we have a lot of first-person research. So what we're going to look at today is some comparisons of just a couple years ago, okay? And we'll do this by show of hands. 2017 versus 2019. First question, how do high school students research their college options, okay? Let's talk about some categories in here. Social media, campus visits, hearing about things and researching things through family and friends, paper mail, there is still such a thing, and your favorite and mine, email, okay? All right, first one. Anyone expect social media in 2017 to be higher than 33%? All right, how many think that social media as a means that students are researching college options, up or down? How many think up? down just a little bit. So what we would call statistically flat. I don't want Ollie to come beat me up for statistics. Yeah, so statistically flat, an interesting number. It seems immediately counterintuitive. We say, oh, Facebook is for old people, right? Even millennials think that. Facebook is for old people. In fact, it's down. All right, next one, campus visits. All right, let's start. Much higher, as you might, or anyone surprised that campus visit is higher than social media? I was surprised that it was higher. All right, up or down from 2017 to 2019? How many think campus visit has increased over the last 2 or 3 years, okay? And then the rest. In fact, it's way down, as a means by which students are learning about institutions and starting that journey to figure out where they want to go and what they want to do. Next one, family and friends. 71% 2017, up or down in 2019? Up. And then the rest are downs, okay? It's actually pretty flat also, oddly statistically flat. Obviously, families are really, really important to the student experience. Much in the same way that the senior industry is thinking that a lot of times the in-between minors and seniors are really the folks our age are the real decision makers for a lot of these audiences on kind of the margins of life here. Family and friends have a huge impact on student decision making. All right, paper mail. What do y'all think this is going to look like? Throw out a number. What percent do you think? 78%. 78% of all students in 2017 were thinking about and learning about higher ed through mail. Another aspect of having this in-home, at least a physical piece of mail on the kitchen table for mom and dad to engage with also. So at EAB, we would engage Ollie and family on that paper mail piece. Up or down, though, in 2019? Up? Come on, guys. Up. Even more increasing. All right, email. We wouldn't all be standing here if it weren't for email.
Don't screw this up, man.
Yeah, don't blow this for us, Gene. So email, a huge proportion, but if Facebook's dead, isn't email dead also? And what our research would show, I hope you guys think this is going to be green. I'm not even going to poll because that would just be embarrassing for anyone that says it's down. So, 86% of all students are thinking about and starting to learn about all of their different college options through email. All right, so what does that mean for us as marketers, for data-driven, for data-savvy? How do we engage, there's that buzzword, how do we engage students, and how do we think about their interaction across channels? We were talking about the 10 channels. If you think about how they break out primarily into some of the more traditional things that we think about, mail, email, digital, let's combine some of those things. So a couple other preference things in here. I prefer multiple channels. I prefer a single communication channel. And then obviously the difference will be I have no channel preference. So multi-channel, up or down? Students want to engage across channels. Up? Up. Actually down a little bit. Again, fairly statistically flat, but this is something that bears looking at. And in fact, those that actually prefer a single channel are down, but are actually on an increasing basis. So this is one of those, looks pretty statistically flat now, but one of those things that we as marketers really need to be attuned to and be thinking about over the next several years. This is where having good data over a long period of time and being really accurate in your measurements plays out. So that's definitely something that we want to think about, and I implore you to do the same thing. All right, we're not going to talk about every single one of these, but when you think about communication channels, again, this one isn't going to be 2017 versus 2019. I'm not going to make anybody guess anything. Oh, I want to use my laser. Oh, yes. You think about the email channel. What we're really talking about now is the beginning of the college search process versus what we would call shortlisting. Usually that's in the middle of the junior year going into the senior year. Right now, there are a lot of students that are finishing their junior year and they're thinking about becoming seniors in high school, and they're thinking about their short list and where they're actually going to apply. And what's really interesting, what the data would tell us, is that again, some of these more traditional channels, which were really surprising to those of us in the audience. If you really think about this, to a 16-year-old boy who's just been slacking along and really, but now just took the PSAT because his mom made him go. He's starting to get actual, real mail addressed to him, something that he's not used to having. Emails that are coming to his email address. This is, and I don't know, we don't have very many millennials and no Gen Zs in here. Gen Zs in here. I think I'm going to use this term right, and I'm going to show how uncool I am. I believe that the young kids call this adulting, right? Yeah, they're adulting, and they expect to be communicated with. A college is an adult thing to be thinking about. It's the first grown-up thing that they're really going to be doing. And so they're looking to those communication channels, and they're not expecting to be tweeted at about their interest in the college admissions process. Now, as they are developing that short list, as their engagement with that institution increases, we'll take a look at some of these channels and take a look at some of the things that are happening. The campus visit goes way up with a short list. They are receptive to receiving text messages, mobile phone calls, calls at home, right? As their engagement increases, so do their willingness to engage back across much more intimate and personal channels. And that's what we as marketers are really trying to get after. And so we see that reflected in the data as well. These guarded channels start to get unlocked for us, okay? All right, let's talk about engagement. There's a couple of roundtable discussions and some of the conversations that I've had with folks over the last couple of days have been absolutely riveting to me, and it's kind of solidified some of the positions that we hold to be true at EAB when we think about engagement. And I want to talk through some of those things and how they relate to email. So let's talk about student email distribution. 2011 versus 2019. Okay, this is. Everyone in the room is probably pretty well familiar with what this looks like. Gmail was just a tiny little baby. It was 17% of student inbox market share. Yahoo was dominant. AOL, I've colored the same because of recent mergers, but those two controlled about half of the market. Hotmail and those Microsoft properties, about 13% back then. And 23% are the other thousands and thousands and thousands of domains that student email that we saw student email coming from. There's no real surprise to anyone in this room that Gmail absolutely dominates student email distribution. So with an education background, if you're not inbox with Gmail, you have an F right off the bat, a bad F too. A lot of consolidation. What's interesting also is this move from 23% to 28%. Gmail's not losing any market share, but all of the other major top 5 players have been squeezed from both ends, right? So a lot of high school systems are really pushing out their own, and students are starting to use their high school email addresses, and the proliferation of those domains is actually increasing a lot. So the middle folks are really feeling the squeeze there. It also makes measuring inbox placement a little challenging across those 28%. So we'll talk a little bit about how my team does that at EAB also. Let's think about what we're really talking about when we talk about engagement with Gmail. So I call it a little bit of the separation of church and state. Most of our marketing isn't actually sent out under the schools.edu. We probably have 40 or 50 clients that we're sending on a subdomain. We're hosting their applications. We're hosting these web experiences on a subdomain of their .edu. But by and large, we own 2 full Class Cs, over 500 IPs, and we own hundreds and hundreds of domains, usually at least one for every client. Typically a .org that we're able to separate the school's transactional from the promotional and marketing messages. And so when we buy a new domain and we have a brand new client and we send out email contact one, it's easy to see what Gmail is doing sometimes. You don't ever notice. You wouldn't be here. You would be millionaires if you had all figured out exactly what Gmail's doing at any given second and what that black box algorithm looks like. But we can see some clues about what it looks like. So just as a point of reference, this was a client of ours, and we're just measuring off the bottom here. We're just measuring minutes since deployment. So brand new domain, first contact out the door. How do you know that you're getting to inbox? Well, you can seed and all of those things. We'll talk about some indexing methods that we use, but this is just looking at seed placement right now. So as soon as you hit send, you get a 250 status. It is sent. There's that MTA handshake. AOL says, yep, got it. It's in inbox. Just sent it within 5 minutes. All the AOL subscribers have that. Well, Gmail does something different. They'll say, yep, got it. And you say, yep, it delivered. I got that delivered status, right? It didn't bounce. Well, if you really look over a time horizon, I've seen this take place over hours and hours. This example is just consolidated to the first hour, where Gmail sends a little bit, maybe about 25, 30%. They'll just send that to inbox and let it trickle out over the first 10 or 15 minutes, 20 minutes, okay? Then it sits and they do nothing for a while. Sometimes that flatlines and you see nothing over, it could be hours. What they're doing is they're waiting. They're waiting, and in that live moment, they're waiting to see what their subscribers do with it. Is there engagement? Are they engaging with those emails? And we'll talk about, well, what does that mean they're engaging with? Is it opens or click-throughs, all of those things? We're going to talk about that. In this particular case, some started going to spam. So Gmail started taking the rest of that 70% they kind of put off in this little corral that they told you had delivered and starts trickling it into the spam box. And you look at this and you say, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? If this had continued red all the way, contact 2 would have all gone to spam. But you see we got a little bit of inbox placement at the end. Contact 2 actually did go to the inbox in this particular case. But if it didn't, we need to be ready to do something. We need to evaluate what it is. And our first inclination is always on the creative side. What did I do? Should I change my subject line? Did I put too many logos in? Do I not have the right number of links? Was my offer bad? All of those types of things. We're going to talk about that. First, let's talk about what engagement really is. Engagement is key. In 2011, the algorithms were a lot simpler. We were still talking about the dirty word dictionary, and there was literally a dictionary that would give all our copywriters that would say, don't put any of these words in your emails. Don't put these in your subject line. It's so much more complicated than that now. We just saw that with Gmail. So obviously, everyone in this room knows opens, click-throughs, clicking direct response. So we're an agency. So it's from the director of admissions. That email to that student is a one-to-one communication from that director of admissions expressing an interest in that student. So we get a ton of direct response where they just click respond. They're not clicking on the 10 tips for the 10th grade year or 3 things an admissions counselor isn't going to expect you to ask at an admissions booth and at the high school commons. Some of these students are just thrilled to be speaking to the VP of enrollment at a prestigious institution. And they just hit reply and say, wow, I'm so thrilled. We get these from parents as well. Fun fact is about every other student that engages at the inquiry stage, when we ask for it, will give us their parent email address. Incredibly important measurement. Ollie, we would definitely put that in some predictive model as an indicator of what we would call downstream matriculation metrics. So responding, whether they forwarded it, whether they do direct replies. And you're saying, Doug, what about F? Opt-outs? That sounds terrible. Why would opt-outs be good? You have to treat opt-outs the right way. Obviously, on the negative side, someone marking it as spam is a heavy indicator to Gmail that this should go to spam for everybody. And opt-outs handled poorly, your unsubscribes handled poorly, and even apathy. After a while, just nothing, Gmail says this looks like spam also. And so what do we do with that, and how do handle that. Let's not be afraid of the list unsubscribe header. Obviously we're legally required. We're talking to minors, so you have to be very careful with how you market to minors. We had avoided having the list unsubscribe in our headers until probably 3 or 4 years ago. And there was a lot of reservation from the executive team that said, well, Doug, that doesn't make any sense. If you put the up in the header before they can even see all of my great creative and all of the wonderful things that we've spent all this time doing, you're going to just have them unsubscribe. You're going to have them opt out right away. Well, why would we do that? Well, one of the mantras that I repeat back to them is, if they're never going to become a numerator, don't put them in the denominator, right? Take them out. If they're not going to be a numerator in your calculation, take them out from the denominator. I would rather have them self-select out from the very beginning than have them mark something as spam, because that means that someone else can't get that email and not just them. Have them opt out or unsubscribe. A couple of basic things that I want to impart on you before I step down and stop running my mouth. Mailboxes are like Wall Street. They don't like surprises. You want to consistently warm. We talked about that. Slow volume, slow ramp-ups. Pave the path for the segments that you think are going to be less engaged. Put your high engagement segments first. Measure absolutely everything. Put as many measurements as you can out there. You won't know that it's broken and how to fix it if you're not measuring it. So seed yourselves. Delivered is not the same thing as inbox. Delivered just means it didn't bounce. There's a hell of a big difference between those two things, and you hear them used interchangeably, and they're not. Use the seed and index method to cross-check results. So what do I mean by that? You're seeding, you're looking at seeds, great, and we should all do that. The index method means percent of pie. If 57% of the students that I sent out for communication were Gmail, I should be seeing 57% coming back in. If it's 10% on my click-throughs or any of the KPIs that I'm measuring, I probably have a deliverability problem. We should think about that. Engagement is all a numbers game. It's that numerator-denominator thing. All right, another quick survey before I wrap up. Which is better? Having pretty decent creative but getting to the inbox at a really high rate, or having really great creative or getting to the inbox at just an okay rate, right? It's a complete and utter waste. Your best creative and all of the time that you're spending out there is an absolute and total waste. And that's a harsh thing to say, but it's actually quite factual, and we've seen that over and over. If you can't get to the inbox, all of that is wasted. And so you've got to focus on those mechanics. All right, I'm sorry, friends. I really am, and I could not help myself, but I present to you the Vengagement diagram. We've talked about offer and what good creative looks like, and making sure that you've got some of your mechanics right, you've targeted well, you've got the right audience, you feel like you've done everything right. Well, we know that there's a third piece to a Venn diagram. Getting to the inbox is really critical on timing also, and we see this in higher ed. If that timing piece is off, you've done everything else perfectly. If that timing piece is off, what do you see? You see your market. You see that inbox shift. And again, the best creative is never going to get seen, and you want as much of those concentric circles coming together and make that middle spot as large as possible. What we see is, it's like that great dinner that we all had last night, right? Has anyone ever had that exact meal for breakfast? No. It's all about timing. If you're marketing high school seniors and you want them to show up on campus, you should probably do that early in the senior year. You could have the best creative, the best everything. If you're launching out into the marketplace now, that chance of you getting into the inbox and the chance of you getting engagement is much decreased. And it's going to keep you from achieving your goals. So keep these kind of 3 tenets in mind as you think about your own campaigns, and I think that we'll see increased success.
Doug, thank you very much. That was great. Any quick questions for Doug? He's going to be in the roundtables later this morning as well. I think we're going to save it for the roundtables, Doug.